Hello everyone, and welcome to this Labs tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you how to save and load data using a JSON file. So it is much more efficient than using player prefs. To do this, we're going to create an empty game object in the scene. So I'm going to create an empty, and I'm going to name this data. I'm just going to reset the transform, and then I'm going to add a component. I'm going to add a component. I'm going to click new script, and then for the name of this script, I'm going to name it save data. I'm going to create and add this script, and then once this script is open, I'm going to edit this script, and it will open up here inside my Unity editor. What I'm going to do, instead of creating things up here, I'm going to go down here and create another public class, and I'm going to name this data. I'm actually going to name this a bit more specific, and this is going to be saved data instead of just data. First, we're just going to need a public string, and it's going to be the player name. Then we can get a public integer. We can get a public integer, and this will be the player health. We can get a public integer, and this will be the player's score. And these are all just sample things. If you have other data that you would like to save, you can put it in here. Now, up in our save data script, I'm going to create a save data, and I'm going to name it data. This is just getting a reference to this class right here. And then I'm going to get a public string name, a public integer named health, and a public integer named score. Now we're going to create a private void, and we're going to call this save data. And this is going to save our data. Let me make this a bit bigger. Now, first I'm just going to do a debug.log and saved data, just so we know that this worked and this saves our data. And I'm getting an error because this save data and this save data are the same, so I'm just going to name this save player data instead. This is going to save our data, and what we're going to do inside of this, before we say save data, I'm going to get our name is equal to our data.name, our health is equal to our data.health, and then our score is equal to our data.score. So our values are going to be shown inside the inspector. That's why we can just see them in there. And then we're going to need a string. I'm just going to call this JSON is equal to JSON utility and .to JSON data and then true. This is going to put our data inside of a JSON. We're going to get a string, and I'm going to name this path, and this is going to be application.persistent data path, and then plus, and then up here I'm just going to get a public string, and this is going to be the file path. This is going to create a file on our data create a file on our computer for the data to be saved in. So I'm just going to click plus file path, and then you name this file path whatever you want the file to be named, which is nice. So what we can do next, file.write all text, and then path, and then JSON. And it's giving a little error here, and that's because we need to be using system.io up at the top. And now this error will go away. So make sure that you have system.io so we can access these files. And now all of this data is saved. So what we're going to want to do is inside start, we're going to call save player data, so it saves our data when we start the game. Then we're going to create a private void, and it's going to be load. Inside of this method, I'm going to do a string named path, and I'm going to set this equal to application.persistentDataPath plus our file path. Now I'm going to get another string, and I'm going to name it JSON, is equal to file.readAllText at the path. This is just reading all of the text at the path of our file. And then I'm going to set the data equal to JSON utility.toJSON, and this is going to be saved data with JSON. And the reason we're getting an error here is because instead of to JSON, this should be from JSON. And what this does is it just turns our data into this saved data right here, which is what we want to do because we want our data to sync up with the numbers that we have up here. So inside of update, I'm going to do if input dot get key down, and then key code dot space or something like this, and then I'm going to load player data, and this is going to load our data in. And then I'm going to check if input dot get key down, key code dot w, and then I'm going to call save player data. These are just random key codes. You can choose whatever you want to save your data. More likely than not, you will just do a button push so that when the player pushes a button, it will save and load their data. So we also need to start out our data. So I'll create a private void start data. And this is just the start data that starts out. So data is going to be equal to a new saved data, and this saved data will have all of these things. So we'll set name is equal to anything you want. I'm going to do Dom Labs. And then health is going to be equal to 100. And then score is going to be equal to 100 too. One last thing before we go into the Unity editor, we're going to want to call start data before we call save player data and start. And then right after we call load player data, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set our name is equal to data.name, score is equal to data.score, and then health is equal to data.health. And this is just updating all of our numbers so that they're right after we load in our data. So once this is good, we can go back inside of Unity, and then right here, we're set the name to whatever we want. And you can see that we're setting it in here, so we don't really have to do anything in here. For the file path, I'm just going to do a slash, and then I'm going to do data, or player data to be more specific. This can be really whatever you want, and this will be whatever you want. It'll just create a file on your computer for the player data. So right now, if I click the start button, when we're inside play mode, you can see here that we have a save data debug.log, because that is right. We saved player data when we're starting our script. So right now, if I change health to 0, and then click space to load back in my health is at 100. So let's say I am playing my game, and then I fight the boss, and my health is at 50. And then I fight another boss, and my health is at 0, so I die. So I have to reset, and now my health is at 100. But let's say I fight the boss, and my health is at 50. Then I can click W to save the data. You can see that we got another save data. And then it resets, but we can set this to 0, and then click space, and it sets back to 100. The reason that it's doing that is because we have one thing backwards inside of our code. You can see here that we have the name is equal to data.name, health is equal to data.health, and the score is equal to data.score. We actually want to switch this. So data.name is equal to name, data.health is equal to health, and then finally data.score is equal to score. We just had this backwards, and that's why it was loading our data when it was saving it. So I'm going to clear out this little thing, and then I'm going to click play, and now once my computer is in play mode, it'll save the data, and then maybe if I put my name in as Dom Labs, and then load it, it will go back to nothing. If I go to Dom Labs, click save data, and then change my name to nothing, Then I load data back in, you can see that my name changed back to Dom Labs. If I change my health to 100 and score to 10, and I load this data, or save this data, and I click load, it does nothing because this data is the same as the loaded data. But let's do this little analogy again. Let's say I fight the boss at 50 health, and then I load back and I die, and I'm back at 100 health. But if I click 50 health, and then I save my game right there, and then I go back down at 50 health. If this tutorial was helpful for you, please give our channel a like and a subscribe because it really helps out a ton. And thank you!